Welcome on in, everybody.
Welcome, everybody. How is everybody doing today? If you don't know, then you should fucking know. You are with Getting Naked with the Hello LLC with the amazing Tara and David. We are your co-hosts. You can call us whatever you want to call us, but just don't call us late for dinner. But anyhow,
That part.
today, ladies and
What
gentlemen,
is for dinner?
we are having an amazing conversation on stop being hard-headed and don't be a blockhead. Well, we're going to be talking about everything from relationships to actual personal growth to mind shift. But if you don't know about the Getting Naked podcast, instead of us talking about it, we're going to showcase our Hello AI Motion Works. Let's go.
Welcome to Getting Naked, where we strip away the bullshit and dive headfirst into the raw, unfiltered, and hilariously messy world of life and entrepreneurship.
We're here to expose the real truths of owning a business and the gut-wrenching challenges that pop up along the way. More importantly, the mind-blowing rewards while we juggle personal growth, wild adventures as digital entrepreneurs traveling the world, and the ins and outs of an interracial relationship, all seasoned with those what the fuck moments that make it all worthwhile.
This isn't your typical buttoned-up podcast. We're uncensored, unapologetically authentic, and just plain funny as fuck. We live by facts over feelings, bringing you the real deal without sugarcoating shit. So, buckle up buttercups, and get ready to get real, get raw, and most importantly, have a laugh with us.
But wait, there's more. We're breaking new ground into the Metaverse with our Hello Plaza. That's right, folks, we're taking this shit to the next level. We are one of the first podcasts in the Metaverse. You can join us from all your devices. Hell, you can even join from your cell phone. Just press the damn button and join us.
10 seconds.
You won't blow up.
You start talking.
We promise.
Now, let's get naked.
2, 1. And we're back. So check out that amazing motion works that we created for our Getting Naked podcast. And we're so excited to be here today talking about don't be a blockhead. And you know what, Mr. Jones? What's that mean? What's our title today mean?
Our title today really means stop being a damn asshole and stop being hard-headed at the end of the day. So often, we get in our conditioned ways, we get in our programs, and this is something that we share with people all the time. There's this trauma that creates this drama that leads to a program, that leads to a pattern. And that is what happens in our life. And today is really about talking about those stubbornness that we have throughout our life, whether that's in personal growth, whether that's in our relationship, and even more so in your mind shift. And we're going to share our personal stories, and somebody might get in an argument. Somebody might say something out of line. Don't worry. That's part of the real, raw, authentic, unfiltered, way of us having our podcast. And so buckle up, buttercups, because it's about to be on when we have this conversation. And more importantly, it's about you having this conversation with yourself as well as we have these conversations. And I'm pretty sure there's going to be something that we talk about that we haven't, maybe even slighted to be like, oh, that might be why. And so that's why we're having this conversation. So you can have that, oh shit moment as well. And so, first things first, we're going to talk about, relationships and how not to be a blockhead and how not to be so stubborn in your relationship. And so I'll just share this, with Tara and I being in business for the last 8 years, having our business and having our relationship, it's been a tough ride. No bullshit. Not only with our relationship, but us as personal and us growing in our own lives. And as we get older, a lot of the times, people change and people have different ways of how they view their relationship, and especially adding in a business, and then being digital nomads as well, being in Mexico and being in a completely different culture, a completely different environment, that adds to it, which is why we share with people, this isn't for the weak. Running a business is not for the weak. Being in business for this long is not for the weak. And it really takes determination and commitment and consistency and developing new things. And so, being in our relationship, wanting to take each other's heads off, wanting to throw each other over the balcony multiple times, it's tough, real talk, where patterns and programs and traumas continue to show up, and it's up to us to be able to fix it And then on top of that, have a business when you are upset or you are mad, continuing to move forward. But even more importantly, just the balance. The balance itself of making sure that you spend time with each other and it just doesn't come into a consumption of business where sometimes in our relationship it has been to where it's more business partners than actually, lovers, friends in the relationship part. And it can get you in a lot of trouble a lot of times. And so, that's my first take on it. What's yours?
I think just at the end of the day, like you talk about, there's balance and the being in business together. My mom, when when I first shared with my mom that you and I were going into business, and my brother's obviously a business owner himself, and he's in business with his significant other, and she says, I just don't. I give a lot of props to you kids, meaning my brother and I, for being in business with our first of all, being in business, but second of all, being in business with our significant others. And she would share with us, and it's because my dad and her also went into business one time in their marriage. And she says it almost ended them. It almost ended the relationship because there is a, you are you are it. That is it. It's the business, it's your relationship, it's the family. At that time they had young ones, so my brother and I were, born and, little kids. But, it's everything. And the ability to run a business together, with people that are not your significant other, you can quickly, decide if you don't want to work with that person, or if you can understand if you want to be able to work with that person, but that person have you don't have to live with that person. So you get to go home, you get to have the weekends, whatever your, working relationship is, right? You get some breaks from that. And when you are a couple that, that is a significant, that's your significant other, and then you also have a business, uh, it there, David and I've had this conversation many times. It gets to the point where you stop and you go, where is what's business and what's personal. And it is very easy for humans on the emotional side to be able to blend all of that and what is said in a personal side and take it into the business, and then it affects the business. And David and I have been in business for 8 years, and we have realized, because we do have our own personal relationship that does obviously intertwine into the business, at times, all the time. It is taking us years to figure out how to be able to pull that apart and be able to say, okay, you and I might not be seeing eye to eye right now personally, but for a professional side, we know how to be professional, and we've had to learn how to do that. We've had to learn how to be able to distinguish the difference and keep it respectful, in that manner of being able to, you might be cussing each other out on the personal side, but on the professional side, you're not going to get anywhere if you bring that personal side into it. And it took us a long time to learn that. It took I'm sure we've, unfortunately lost clients and all that because of, us dropping the ball in our business, right? I don't know any directly, but I'm just saying at some point our energy overflows, as we talk about, and that could, affect anybody energetically. And so, it's the balance. Life is all about a balance. Life is about a balance within yourself. We talk about don't be a blockhead. Well, the blockhead it starts with you, your two thumbs. You fix you, you take care of you. The problem in our society is that we want to look everywhere else to take care of everything, including myself. I do it as well, but we want to look externally instead of stop and look internally and say, okay, who am I being? What am I being? How am I being? And is this effective or ineffective? And that's when, the growth happens. That's when you can sit with yourself, authentically be with yourself and be like, yeah, that wasn't cool, or that was a, not a good move, or that was, a trauma that popped up that you enacted on. And it comes down the pipeline of just being able to identify those things. And it really leads us into the first part of this conversation, which is, our self-awareness, and the self-awareness that we learned through this journey. And, you know, I ask myself, like, if I didn't embark on the journey of, being in a relationship with you, if I didn't embark in a business with you, would I have went on the same personal growth, mindset growth, self-awareness, and, awakening growth that I've had? Would I have been down that same um, route? And, the answer that I came up with was probably not the exact same route. It would have been something similar, or something within those boundaries, but it wouldn't have been this, because if you and I are not together, and then our business isn't together, those don't bring those experiences with that you learn from and that you have to grow through. So I guess that's my first kind of pass at it, just it's the sense of understanding the balance. And, at what point are you being effective, and what point are you being ineffective, and what part are you solving problems, and what part are you contributing to the problem? So, yeah.
Well, yeah, there's, and this is something that I share with you, or something I share with a lot of people. You can either get better or you can get bitter. And what I find a lot of the times is that people get bitter because of past is brung back up, because of burnt bridges, because of things that are said that aren't said, or shouldn't be said, or comments are made that the other person makes, but now, it's utilized as it's an okay or excuse for the other person. And it really doesn't work, especially as we talk about double-edged sword in our relationship, where, I share with Tara all the time, you talk about this double-edged sword, but you're doing the exact thing you don't want me to do. You're calling me a name out the get-go when you tell me names aren't acceptable, but yet you're the first one, dropping a name, and that just doesn't work. And so, I know I'm not the only man that's dealing with that, or any woman that's dealing with that, where you just sat there and said, we have to be owners of how we're being, but that's talking it, but actually walking it is a different story. That when I share with you and multiple people that, the heat of the battle is when it actually matters. You can't be a curmudgeon head at the board table and then come back and say, oops, I'm sorry, and it's supposed to be okay, and we're just supposed to move on. Sorry is just an excuse for a repeated pattern. And at some point, you, everybody has to stop giving people the knives to put in their back, for them to put it right back if they're going to keep saying sorry for the same thing and doing the same patterns, which is what we talk about: traumas, dramas, patterns, and programs. Especially, just the other day, Tara was telling me about myself and who I was being, but in the same breath saying that we need to be worried about ourselves. And I'm looking at her like, you realize that you're telling me that we need to focus on each other, but this whole 20 minutes you're telling me about me, but you haven't said anything about you. And so this is where we have to be self-aware of what we're saying, how we're saying it at the heat of the battle, and especially when somebody brings it back to your attention, that you don't avoid, you don't say, no, that didn't happen, or you lie about, what was said or what wasn't said, or you try to just skim away from it and run away from it, as I say, just cowardly at the end of the day. And so this is where your relationship does impact your relationship, because there have been multiple times that Tara has gotten mad and reneged and left me to do things, and vice versa. And that just doesn't work. And it loses money, it loses clients, and more importantly, it loses time. And time is our only competition that I continue to share with people. And especially, when we talk about conflict resolution, that's one thing to say it, but there's another thing to actually do it and be a part of it, and not just continue to do the same things and say, oh, I'm changing, but what are you doing differently? And how are you doing it differently? Because as Tara does, she'll get on her headphones, go in a room and just leave my ass hanging when she expects me to come to her. But when I do come to her, there's an argument, and vice versa. That's if I can get her to come to me, that we've talked about multiple times. it just doesn't work. And this is where the conflict resolution has to be solidified, and it has to be not just held to integrity, but has to be done when it counts most, and not try to use excuses or bullshit excuses at that to weasel your way out of it. And so being in a relationship and a business is tough. No bullshit. I remember my good friend, saying, "Hey, you're signing yourself up for a death warrant." And at some points, I'm like, shit, maybe they were right, because my demeanor and Tara's demeanors is two different ways, of how we work and when we work, of getting things done. And it can be different for multiple different people. And so that's a path and a real, journey that we encourage you all to be able to really, ask yourself, do you want to do that? And, something I've shared with you guys before, I had one gentleman I asked, I said, if you could do this all over again, would you do it? Hell no, David, if I knew what I knew now. And I'm starting to believe more and more, of what he meant by that, of being able, as Tara just shared, if I still was working at my my corporate VP level, where would I be now 8 years later? What business or what job would I be at, and how many jobs would I have moved from this job to that job, knowing that the average person goes through 14 different jobs. I just had one of my good friends that now is looking for a job, and I'm like, "Ooh, shit." I'm so glad that I don't have to be looking for a job, right now in this economy, especially with all this AI and technology that's taking place, which is why we continue to remind you all that you better be finding something to replace your cell phone bill, your light bill, your cable bill. And if you're just scroll holing your life away, TikToking your life away, talking about you got this, you got that, you're doing this and doing that, and you're spending 8 to 10, 12 hours continuously every day doing the same shit, which just blows my mind how people just scroll hole and get lost. But it's programming. We talk about television, but these phones are just as bad, and social media can be just as bad, because I share this. You go on your social media and you're in this type of way, you're going to get all those videos that you're feeling. Your phone definitely knows how to read you. Think of an elephant right now, and I guarantee you in 2 or 3 weeks from now, or even a week from now, an elephant will show up in your feed. And that's what, the social media is doing. It's feeding into our emotions, and it's really, giving us a validation, bullshit validation at that, based on our feelings. And so you have to be careful of the thin line between the social media and relationship. And this is something that me and Tara are definitely good at. Tara has access to my phone. I have access to her phone. She knows all my passwords and everything. And we know a lot of relationships that are not like that. Our relationship wasn't like that at the very beginning, where it was, no, this is my damn phone. You have your phone. And I think, especially today, as we move on, and Tara, you can back up on this, is the personal growth of our relationship and our business, of the things that we used to do compared to what we do now, and reflecting, not regretting, on the two differences of where we are now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think just to touch base on the phone thing, is as you said, there's a lot of relationships out there that don't have that trust factor. At the end of the day, there's a point, where David and I didn't have that trust factor between each other. When we entered into business, it was a different story. At the end of the day, everybody has issues within their relationship. Some people deal with, partners that have infidelity issues between partners, regardless if it's one or both, right? Infidelity is not an issue in between ours, and that's why a lot of times people don't want their phone, being utilized by their significant other because they're doing something shady. There's not shady shit done between David and I. What our issues are is communication. It's communication breakdowns. It's short, sweet and simple when you look at it from the outside looking in. But what happens is emotions get involved. Emotions are always involved when it comes down to personal relationships. David shared a lot of things about, things that I have shared and whatnot. And I think the biggest thing when I look at our relationship. And then of course we have clients and all that. They talk about sometimes their, not personal relationships, but, just relationships in general, like with friends or things like that. What I see is it 9.99999% of the time, out of 10, it is, it's communication. There's a miscommunication between something, and it usually has some sort of emotion tied to it. So that emotion that happened, something's tied in there, and that's usually what happens. Um, as David was sharing, about talking about, when we share about taking care of your two thumbs, and then I spend 20 minutes sharing with him who he's been being, while I'm sharing with him that we need to worry about our two thumbs. It comes down from a perspective of, and this is, everybody deals with this. I talk about this, with, in my personal support, circle, which is very, very, very small. But what I talk about and what I share is that, it all comes down to, if people were just aware of who they were being, and if they held themselves to the most high integrity, including myself. This is for everybody. Just because I'm saying it doesn't mean that I'm exempt. But if everybody would just take a look about how they act, how they react, how their body language and how they address things, how they position their words, the tones that they use, all of that inflection, body, body language, all of that goes into communication. That is all types of communication. And what happens is, like when I'm telling David about who he is being, is because it's always easier to see somebody else what they're doing. And a lot of times in our relationship, it is we are doing the exact same thing to each other, and then getting upset at the other person for doing it while we're doing it. And that's why I always say, come down to being aware of who you're being. And that goes to, and it goes in our relationship. I try to share this with David all the time. First of all, you're going to listen to your significant other different than you do anybody else, period. So if Joe Blow walked up the street, up to you on the street and said, can you give me directions to the post office? You'd be like, yeah. And you would give him directions or whatever. Your significant other comes up and says, hey, give me directions to the post office. Well, you're going to read their body language. You're going to read their tone. You're going to read the attitude or the not attitude behind it or whatever. You're going to read into it, right? And that is the difference between when people are in an intimate relationship versus a professional relationship versus a non-relationship at all of a stranger. And so it comes down to, you know, all the time. David and I, our biggest upset is who did what at what point. And David's always trying to, point out and share with me and show me who I'm being in a situation, or what I did to inflict a situation, or maybe put gas on the situation. And what I'm doing in the
Maybe.
same breath and what I am doing in the same breath is sharing with Mr. Jones about the same thing. Well, we wouldn't be here if you didn't say that, or if you didn't say it in that tone with that freaking, demeanor, with that body language of the what the fuck. There's always accountability. And my biggest thing that I share with David is take fucking ownership and accountability of yourself. Fuck everybody else. Doesn't matter if the asteroid came down out of the earth and smashed your car. Take ownership for parking your car there. You should have parked it somewhere else. That is extreme ownership. Great book. Read Extreme Ownership. And when you sit down and take extreme ownership of who you are being in a situation, it doesn't matter whatever external circumstances happen, whether it's a person, place, or thing that has caused anything. You have to take ownership of yourself. And I'm constantly sharing with David that I would wish he would take extreme ownership of some things that he does when at the heat of the battle. Like he said, don't be a curmudgeon head when you're in at the boardroom. And he shares that a lot with me. And I look at him as if he's got 17 fucking eyes and 10 ears and 18 heads, because I'm like, yeah, bingo, buddy. You should take your own advice. And the biggest, so I can tell you the issue is with a lot of couples, they don't know what their problem is. I can tell you our problem. Our problem is communication breakdowns when somebody does something in the beginning and then does not realize what they have done, i.e. if David starts something and says something or acts some way that pops something off and is not aware of it until I say something, but I say it in a rude manner, and then all of a sudden the recollection starts where Tara took action. No, no, no. Let's go back to extreme ownership of where David started, what David did, what David said, what David, whatever, or vice versa. Let's go back to extreme ownership of where Tara started if it's from David's point of view. Like the point of view I'm sharing is not a biased point of view. David has the same point of view as I do, is like, what the fuck? You're doing the same shit. Can you see it? Why can't you see it? You're telling me about it, but you're doing the same thing. And when I talk about in our relationship, and David and I have this conversation a lot, is that we talk about this double standard where it's okay for one person to do it, but the other person, when they do it, it's all hell breaks loose. And David and I are constantly sharing with each other going, hey, you're right now, it's a double standard because what you're telling me not to do, you're doing it right now, and vice versa. I'll say, hey, David, what you're telling me right not to do right now is exactly what you're doing. And so I share this because honestly, everybody goes through this. And if everybody, and I'm myself am fucking number one in this, if you would take extreme ownership of who you are and understand that the situation at play is because of who you're being. But I'm going to share this as well. If you're in a relationship and you're 20 years, 40 years, 30 years, 10 years, 1 year, I don't know, wherever you get to in your relationship, and there's things that are not being changed, as in David and I share, he's got a list of things that he's asked me for, many, many moons of our relationship, and mine vice versa, that there's behaviors that we both do in communication, in how we problem solve, in how we conflict resolution. There's certain behaviors that happen, and if you're not taking extreme ownership to change those, then that's on you. The other person can't change that person. So we'll use David and I as an example. David can't change me, even though he wants me to do XYZ. One of the things on there is not to raise my voice. When we're in an upset and we're at the boardroom table in the heat of the battle, not to raise your voice and to allow him to be heard and not interrupt or overtalk him. And that same thing goes, the same thing that he's asking me, I'm asking of him, and we're both talking about what is your solution to conflict resolution? Like, how do you go about resolving conflict? Do you go multiple days and not talking? Do you go into your room and isolate like I do? What are your conflict resolution ways, right? David, you're not going to get spoken to for days on end. That's just, he's not going to, you're on probation. But those are just learned behaviors. And so it comes down to, are you willing in your relationship to change your learned behaviors for the benefit of the growth of your relationship? If you are, great. If you aren't, then okay, that's great too. But you have to realize at some point the relationship that you're in, that you're having these conflicts with, might not make it for the longevity because your unwillingness to change. And a lot of times what happens is people will change, but they change for a brief point of time. I'm guilty of it as well. We all are. David is just as equally as guilty as I am, as the next human next to us. It comes down to, when you make those changes, is you've got to go through your life as, look, I'm myself. David's his self. Like, yes, we're in a relationship together and we have a life together, but I cannot pee for David and he cannot pee for me. I cannot make him drink and he cannot make me drink. I cannot make him change and he cannot make me change. And so it gets to a point where if there's repeated behaviors that have been agreed upon or not agreed upon or spoke about, that, hey, this does not work for me in this, then you have to the responsible way is to speak about it and to share about it and to communicate about it and allow that person who you're communicating with to be able to have time. This is the thing, to rectify the situation or the behavior or the response mechanisms that show up. You have to give that. If you don't have to, like, you could just disappear and move on. And there's, I've been guilty of, like, poof, gone out and don't have to deal with that shit no more. Everybody in this life has Irish exited at some point. But if you really have integrity within a relationship, you have to stop and say, hey, hooty hoo, this is not working for me. This part right here, this is the part that's not working for me. Can we work on this? What are some resolutions to this? How can we get through this? And it really needs to be a sit down conversation instead of it bringing up in the heat of the battle. Because the heat of the battle, nobody is willing to listen. I'm not willing to listen to what David has to say. He's not willing to listen to what I have to say because you're upset. And if you would just sit down and say, hey, let's have a conversation, like, look, there's actions and ways of being that he does that drive me crazy, and there are things that I do that drive him bonkers. That is human nature. And guess what? If he got rid of me or I got rid of him, we're going to have the same issue moving on with other humans, because that is ultimately an issue within yourself, which is why when things happen in your life, and you might be in a professional situation or have a friendship, and this friend or this coworker does something and they're just constantly do this behavior and it annoys you like no other, to where you just hate that person, and hate's a strong word. So you just dislike that person so much. It comes down to, whoa, motherfucker, look at yourself, because there's something in you that it's irritating. And that's what, like, when David and I find that if there's an irritation between us, 10 times out of 10, I'm going to just be, it's not even 9.999 out of 10. It's 10 out of 10 that that behavior that person's doing, whether it's David doing it, I'm doing it too, and vice versa. And the biggest thing is to sit down and realize, hey, we're not fucking perfect. Neither one of us are. You're not either. That's a good thing. If you were perfect, there would be a lot of, it would be
Still be
boring.
problems.
You wouldn't be, it would be boring, because at that point you did everything right. You didn't have a growth. You didn't have a life lesson. And I saw a TikTok the other day of, a young lady talking about grief, and she had lost a parent, and, the grief that just engulfed her. And I was thinking about, the grief that I've experienced through losing my father, the grief of losing our baby, which is our dog, Stony, the grief of losing anybody, friends, whether they're still alive now or if we've lost them to the other side. The thing is it comes down to, when that happens, is, are you, that grief that you experienced, she was just talking about how it's just engulfing her. And I thought about, when I saw that, was, yeah, grief is not fun. Grief really, really is painful and it hurts. But there's something beautiful in it to learn, and there's something to grow from it. And it really is the messy part of the canvas of getting them. It's the messy part when painting and all that and building your life canvas. But it really is the glue of holding it all together and making it all make sense. I don't wish grief on anybody. I don't wish anybody to have to go through that pain, because it stinks, but it does something to you. And so, you know, I think at the end of my point, kind of in that is, the growth, the pain, the growing pains. How many of you remember growing when you were a child, waking up in the middle of the night and your knees just hurt so bad? It's those growing pains. And, at some point, you might be in a relationship and realize that, hey, this is just going to be what's so, and either accept it or don't accept it, but have communication around it. So that way the other person's not bombarded and are blindsided to where, well, there was never room to be able to fix it. And a lot of times what happens is, and I'll park it after this, love, so you can have a conversation. You can jump in on
You
it.
can start your own podcast.
I should. A lot of times what happens in this mode is that when there's an upset with a significant other, when there's an upset with a boss or coworker or, someone just driving in traffic, a stranger that you don't know, we're real quick to say, fuck it. We're real quick to just, uh, cancel that person, walk away, remove yourself from the situation. And when they say that relate, marriages and relationships aren't like the good old days, well, that's because people are not communicating anymore. And there might come a point where you do go your separate ways, but did you give it the time, the space, the energy, and for that person or yourself to grow, to change, to try, to not try, but do what they're going to do about it? So, Mr. Jones.
Yeah. And furthermore, you talk about communication. Communication is definitely not having a conversation. And this is something that me and Tara have shared multiple times for you guys to all take to your own relationship, is that, when there is a conversation, allow that other person to share what they want to share. So prime example for Tara and I, if she goes to share, as you can see, she might take 20, 30 minutes, sharing what she needs to
Long-winded.
share. And it's up to my ass to remember all the shit that she said during that 30 minutes for me to repeat back to her what I heard her to say. And it is up to me to hold my tongue, just as I just did now, of saying whatever she wants to say and letting her getting it out, not interrupting her. She could be wrong. She could be saying the sky's black and it's blue. She could say whatever it is, but it's my job to shut the fuck up and not say a word. And then when she gets finished talking, it then is also up to me, which is why it's important for the other person to listen to that person, to put on the shoes and not listen to deny, not listen to respond, not listen to negate or say this or come up with some bullshit ass excuse, and to really take ownership at that point, but to really take ownership and say, hey, I heard you to say XYZ, XYZ. Z, A, B, C. You get it all out. That person is then hopefully will repeat back to you, hey, you got this, you got that, not repeating back what they said or going into a circle. There is going to be some things that somebody adds back on, especially if the other person interrupts them in their train of thought that they were getting out and now they have to start over. So you're going to have that. And then after that, it's time for Tara to listen to me as I get to share and I get to say what I want to say. And then it's up to her to be able to say, hey, David, I heard you to say X, Y, Z. The way not to do this is to allow the other person to talk. They share back with you what you said, then you share your thing and then say, nope, you don't have to talk to me. You don't have to conversate. Conversation's over. And then yet sit there and say, we're not communicating, or we need to communicate, but you continuously do the same pattern in the program. And then you say there's no communication. Well, you shut down the communication every time it's for me to explain back to you what you said. And this is something that we all have to be aware of when we talk about, being aware. Make sure your ass is not getting stuck in the same bullshit ass story. Prime example, Tara shares with me all the time that I never apologize, or I should apologize this way, or I should apologize that way, or shouldn't be any exceptions. When at first it was I didn't apologize. Now it's the way I apologize. And now it's you're not being authentic with your apology. So I've went through this, changed the goalpost like 3 times. And every time I have to sit there and say, I did apologize. I did say that. I did do this. And it goes in one ear and goes out the other. And so that's why we can't get trapped in these stories that we tell ourselves that continue to get us in that stuck pattern, and it just ruins the whole thing. And when we're not aware of these patterns that we run with, especially when we say, hey, don't communicate or don't say this or bring up the past, it just doesn't work. So we talk about change, but we have to make sure we're doing the change and being consistent with the change as we move through the relationship, and not going 2 steps forward and 4 steps back. And that's what happens, especially you guys hear us talk about love, kindness, and integrity. That is just a cute thing, but it actually has to be done when it actually counts the most. And that's why we share with you guys, a lot of people talk, but a lot of people don't walk. And everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody's ready to die. And just like in a relationship, the same anger, the same frustration, the same negative energy that you bring to the table is the same amount of damn energy that you could put into it to be positive and to be, grateful and to be, have these good things happen in your life other than worried about the negative. And a lot of the times that's what happens. And that's why I share social media definitely plays a big factor into that, where we're all jumped up and juiced up on what we're seeing on social media, but that's not real life. And especially in relationships, I mean, yeah, that it can mess you up, on what this person is doing, what that person is doing, what this person is wearing, what this person is being able to do. And then we get in our self-conscious mind of the things that we're supposed to have in our relationship. But what are you doing to create that in your relationship is the better story. And so we can always point the finger at everybody else, but we really have to be deep down inside, as I continue to share, those patterns and those programs will be the death of you, because your pride and ego will not get out of the way. And that's why we move forward to our next topic, right? Which is the growth, the personal growth, of being able to transition from one way of thinking to another. I was just thinking this the other day, 4th of July was just the other day or just yesterday. And 4th of July, the mindset would have been, I need to go, make sure I got all my alcohol. Need to make sure we're buying all this meat, and we need to make sure I got, the actual, yard put together, because we're having friends come over and do all the kumbaya and do all the fireworks, and just spend a whole bunch of money. Where yesterday was the 4th of July, and it was like it was a regular day, if not just a normal day on a Thursday, and didn't have to worry about that mindset. And really, the personal growth comes within yourself. A lot of people can talk about, this and crystals and vibrations and energy and all of this stuff, but that's not personal growth just because your ass talks about it. Number one, you can talk about it and have all the crystals wrapped around your neck and on the counter and all this other shit. You need to make sure those crystals are positive and not negative, number one, if you're being negative and continuously being negative. And so personal growth is not just talking about it, it's doing the work. And this is why I've shared with you guys multiple times, sit your ass down and go be by yourself. And a lot of the times we won't go be by ourselves, where we turn off the music, we turn off the movie, we turn off the TikTok, we turn off all the shit, and really sit down with ourselves and be like, hey, how am I showing up? Am I calling people names and telling them not to call me names, and I'm bringing the fire to it in all aspects of my life? What am I really doing, and do I want to change? And a lot of the times people will be fucking cowards and roll out because they don't want to change. And that's what Tara's talking about, is this iris exit, of just rolling the fuck out. And I personally, think that's just a coward, where if you're not willing to change, then what personal growth are you doing? Especially if you're continuously telling everybody else to change, but on recordings and on this fact and on this fact and on this, that, and the other, there's no fucking change. And so be aware when you talk about, personal growth, especially when you talk about business. And as you will do in your relationship is what you will do in your business. If you're not doing daily things in your business, your ass ain't doing daily things in your relationship. If you're not taking action in your business, you're probably not taking action with your significant other. If you're not doing business and following up with people when you're not being told to, you're probably not doing that in your relationship. And so this all is one big circle that I will continue to share. All is one. How you do one thing is how you do everything. And a lot of people will try to sell you on bullshit ass excuses. Well, this, that, and other bullshit. Are you doing it? Yay or nay? No? Okay. Well, don't talk about nobody else changing if you're not fucking changing.
Yeah, I mean, that bingo, don't talk about anybody else changing unless you're changing. I mean, those are words to live by. And I think a lot of times what happens in whether it's our relationship or others is someone has a whole lot to say about what the other person is doing, like I shared, but then reality, they're doing the same thing. There's a lot of times David shares with me what I'm doing, what I'm being, and I'm looking at him going, yep, and you're doing the same fucking thing. And so
Not in taking
it
action
comes
in the
down
business
to,
there, partner. Taking action, we doing that all day, every day. Cat got your tongue?
I was just letting you finish if you had any more room.
No, this is conversation. It's called real, raw, authentic conversation.
Gotcha. So, at the end of the day, what comes down to the simple pipe of this is that when people understand that, there's a way of showing up. And sometimes people don't realize how condescending they are. And some people times don't realize how their behaviors of who they are. It's kind of like when you have a conversation with a narcissist. They don't know they're a narcissist.
Facts.
You can tell them they're a
Facts.
narcissist all day long, and they're not going to, actually be aware of themselves. And so it just
Facts.
comes down to, the awareness of oneself. When you talked about, growth as a human is, are you aware of yourself? And you can continue to look external, but until you go internal and you push everything out, all factors out. It doesn't matter if it's about your job, your business, your dog, your cat, your mom, your sister, your brother, your aunt, your uncle, your significant other, whatever, does not matter. If you can remove all of that and actually take a look at yourself and say, who am I being? How am I speaking to others? When others share with me, do I interrupt them? Do I talk over the top of them? Do I do these things? Like, that self-awareness is going to be your best friend. Again, you can't change other people. You can bring it to their awareness and say, hey, I see this behavior. I see this is going on. Can you take a look at it? Would you be willing to take a look at it? They have a choice. They can say, yes, I'm absolutely willing to take a look at it and I'm on it. I'll go, check that out and, let me know if there's anything else. Or they can say, nope, I don't do that. Whatever. I'm not you. No, the only reason I did that was because you did this. And if you are a
Mm-hmm.
person who is saying that only reason I did this is because you did that, it comes down to the simple fact that you're not being self-aware, period. And I say that from my own self-awareness because there's a lot of times I'm sharing with David about who he's being. And I'm like, are you aware of this? And in the same breath, I'm doing it or I've done it in the past or I'm doing it in the future. There's a thing. And so it comes down to a certain point that when these behaviors happen and one person or both people are not changing, or one changes for one moment and then the other person changes for the other moment, and then there's a behavior relapse or whatever, it comes down to, you have to make a choice as a human after you've communicated, talked about it. If it's not going to change, then you have to figure out if that's what you want or you don't want. That's what we all do in life. You have to figure out whether you want to go into business or don't want to go into business. Do I want to buy a red car or buy a black car? Do I want to be in this relationship or do I not want to be in this relationship? You have to figure out what those sacrifices and those commitments that you're going to make, you know, to each other. And regardless if you are married or not married, if you're in a committed relationship, you're in a committed relationship and you have commitments and you have a vow when you come into a relationship together, to where you make that vow of, you're going to be a better person. You're going to strive to do better things for the benefit of yourself, the relationship as a whole, the other person, and society. Are you being a good person? And look, there's a lot of people out there in this world that have realized that they're just not good in relationships, and that's why they're currently single, because they're like, nope. Like, I laugh at my mom because I'm always like, hey mom, whatever you want to do after my dad passed away, this year will be 15 years that he's been gone now. And I have that conversation that, hey mom, if you want to move on with your life and have another significant other, or, not, do what you want to do. Like, what makes you happy? And she always laughs. relax. Like I'm good by myself. I make myself happy and I'm good right there. And so that's her choice. It's your choice. It's our choice to be in a relationship. It's all comes down to choice and communication. And people can sit here and share about egos and prides and what other people are doing. And great, cool. But are you aware of your own ego? Are you aware of your own pride? Are you aware that you are doing the exact same things? If you're not, then no worries. There's no worries because again, that's your choice. And the other person has a choice. So it choice to be there or choice to not be there. And so it just comes down to that willingness to change. And sometimes you get to the point in the road where you've tried, you've done changes, and maybe changes aren't happening. Maybe they've not been communicated. Maybe they're just stuck in the way. I got my ways that I have stuck, and it's just like, are you willing? And that's the question. And that's the beautiful thing that David and I learned 8 years ago when we started our mindset journey and our growth journey was the power of choice and the power of potential. There's unlimited amounts of, I'm sorry, the power of possibility. There's unlimited amounts of possibility out here. There's also the power of choice. When you make a decision, you kill it. But when you have choices, you're putting life into whatever you're choosing. And so, a lot of times things, people will tell David and I, oh my God, you guys have such amazing personal growth, or you've done this, or you're so good at that. It's taken a lot of work. There's a lot of work behind it. There's a lot of things behind it that we've had to, tune, refine, retune. And it just comes down to the willingness. And sometimes people get tired of um, being willing or being the one to make the willing full changes while other people are not. And so you just have to, again, comes down to the power of your choice. Are you going to make the personal growth for yourself and have extreme ownership where that means you, it doesn't matter anybody else in this world. You, are you doing what you need to be doing? Fuck everybody else. Are you doing it? Because it doesn't matter what anybody else does, says, or, whether they're here or there or alive or not alive. It doesn't fucking matter. What are you doing? And so that's what I would have to say on all that.
Yeah. No, especially just circle back when you talked about, narcissists, let me help you with that.
All right, we're back and we're still live. All right, back and take it away.
Awesome. Awesome. So as I was sharing, when you were talking about, just to back up a sec, when we talk about narcissists, we have to really be careful, when we say that word, because there was a time I remember Taylor Made Smith speaks. That when we first started, he would talk about all of these things and he would help people get out of narcissist relationships. And I'll never forget, him sharing some of the stories that he was talking about. And as I was saying, a narcissist is definitely somebody that tells you what you can and cannot say when it's your time to speak. Like when we were talking about earlier, when it's my turn to speak, you can't tell that other person what they can and cannot talk about. And that right there is definitely, a narcissistic behavior, especially when you do things and don't expect the other person. And it's really about control, about taking over control and or, avoiding to be able to be, told about, or not even told, just some when me and Tara say, hey, I'm sharing with you about who you're being, a lot of the times we don't like that. And that's okay. But you have to be able to take those things in consideration and really go be by yourself and say, hey, that actually really did happen, especially, if it's recorded or if it's, somebody else witnessed it or something's there. We always say, there's three sides to a story. Well, there's her side, my side, and the other side is the truth. But if that's recorded, then that is the truth. And if that's what happened, then that's what happened. It's not you believe in something, we see things differently. If you want to see things differently, let's go to the tape, as they say. And so, this is where we really have to be aware that in the heat of the battle, how we show up and how these conditions, take place, and really that personal growth. This is not just talking about personal growth or getting in audio rooms or getting on lives saying this, that, and the other, but it's actually doing the things when it matters, and so we have to be able to be aware of that personal growth. Prime example for myself, when me and Tara used to get in an upset, which just ticks me the fuck off when she says you're not changing. I used to go out. I used to disappear. Go out till 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, smoke 5, 6 packs of cigarettes. Just be off the chain. Whereas now, I'll go sit by myself and I'll start explaining to myself, what's going on, and that's considered a rant. And then anything that I say in that rant, she takes it as me saying it to her. And me personally, I don't think that's right? For me to be able to be self-expressing to myself out loud. And if you hear it or if you don't hear it, that is not me talking to you, especially if you get to add in your additional consultation that was never said when in fact it's only about what actually happened. Or, right, there might be a recording or a tape of what happened and it gets recorded. And so this is where we have to really be able to understand when we are sharing out to the world of what's really going on and not deny, not deflect, or renege on who we're being and how we're being, especially if it's right there. And or more importantly, don't lie, right? If you said something, just own up to it. What pisses me off personally is that when somebody says something and then they come back and say, oh, I didn't say that. And it's like, are you fucking kidding me? You absolutely said that. That is exactly what you said. Don't change it around. Don't say, oh, it was this, it was that. And that's that shit that, as being in an interracial relationship that I share with Tara that, hey, look, I went to school with white people, for 12 plus years. I know all the bullshit ass excuses that will be used and that will be, turned back on. And this is where I have to bring Tara up to the plate and say, hey, that shit don't work, man, because that shit doesn't work for me being a black guy. You can use those bullshit ass excuses, but that shit doesn't work in my world, which is why a lot of the times, people say interracial couples don't work. And in a sense, it's two different worlds. I grew up in a different household. Tara grew up in Idaho. You guys heard her say last week, in Idaho, and it just being a small town where there's two different worlds and there's two different patterns that we've both had to break and get over as we move forward. Especially as we talk about, me being black, Tara being white, and that's definitely something that we're going to continuously talk about in this podcast, and that might be something that we talk about in the next one of just different, conversations, that we've had and even experiences. I'll never forget the time that when me and Tara did, go to church, or we went to this one church, and we went to the later service. I'll never forget, we were walking into church, and we were getting the most evilest fucking eyes from people walking out of church. And I'm like, whoa, what is this? And as a black person, you know the look. Let's just be real. You know the look. And with Tara being with me for this long, she kind of knows the look, but it's still a little naive to it. But there's a look. We go into this church service and we hear the preacher say, you need to accept people for this, that, and the other. I'm like, hold on. These people just walked out the damn church and heard the same sermon, but yet they were looking at us crazy. And so, this is where we have to be able to really look back at our patterns and how we grew up and the surroundings that we grew up in, and really be aware of those things and how we try to use, these things against one another. And it's tough, especially in our relationship, especially when it comes down to us in disagreements, where I say, that's that shit right there, of utilizing that, because it just doesn't work. And this is the personal growth, this is the mindset shift that I've had to recondition from my father's conversation of white man this, white man that, this, that, and the other, that we've all heard as being in a relationship. And I'll say it loud and proud, we as black people say that, white people are racist, but in all reality, we're both racist. Because if white people stop being racist today, then I can assure you black people would have the same prejudices, the same racism that they've grown up with, that the same white girl or white person's grown up with. And it's just a habit. It's a pattern. It's a program that we have to, reprogram ourselves on, especially as we just had, July 4th as Independence Day, and then June 19th, a month before that, there was a completely different, essence of Independence Day, of how those things are celebrated, and they're important for both parties. And a lot of the times, I don't think it's fully recognized or fully accepted by the world as a society, but it is getting better. I will say that, and it is more accepted, but there's still that mentality or that programming way that you have to be self-aware of, especially your nonverbal looks out there. So be aware when your ass come out of church, of how you looking at things, and if you really took the lesson or if you just listened to the lesson.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to kind of follow up on that, you said some really cool things about, like, there's three sides of a story: yours, mine, and then what happened. And then there's what happened that has on the recording. And I always like to remind everybody that David is, a football player. I, played, multiple sports. But the reason I say that is there's film to go back and watch your football game or your basketball game, to watch the defenses that are being played, to watch who's doing what, to watch. I mean, there's so many aspects of the film when you review, to, offenses and defense, to personal, what you're doing, to what, just the O-liners doing, or what just the guards, on in basketball are doing, or what the bigs inside are doing. Like, there's so many aspects of watching film. And we all know that a film is only effective, like, if you watch and capture the whole thing. It is not effective when you pick up and, start recording during the fourth quarter, but you missed all of the other 3.5 quarters. If you picked up in the middle of the fourth, like, there's a whole other part that has been not captured. And so now you don't have a record to go back and watch film. And a lot of times, that is a big thing, because sometimes what happens is recordings are taken and it starts in the middle, and then that's where
I
the
wouldn't say the middle,
story or
maybe
the
the
issue.
first quarter of the 13-minute mark of the 15-minute, but
Well, I
not the
would just say, at
halftime
the end of
fourth
the day,
quarter.
my point being is that the person that is doing the recording, to then reference the recording to say, see, this is what's happened, has completely missed the kaboom, or the big upset, or what happened in the beginning, and is now, that's not on record. So now the record that we do have, we're going off of that record instead of what actually happened. And there's always, like David said, there's three sides of the story. There's his side, my side, and then actually what happened. And the issue that always arises for us is what happened at the beginning? What did you do or what did I do? And there's always that demeanor of, wasn't me, it started with you. Or wasn't me, it started with you. Vice versa. Doesn't matter who's saying it, whether it's me to David or David to me. There is a part, and that's where I come back to this extreme ownership conversation. We have to get out of the what you're doing and be like, okay, well, I'm the one in here that is not allowing her to talk. I've, spoke over the top of her. I interrupted her multiple times when she's trying to ask a question or she's trying to share something. And then where does that spark off? Then the person that is sharing, i.e. me, shuts down. I don't want to share. If you're not going to listen, you're going to interrupt, you're not going to be a part of it, then cool. I'm not going to share. I don't have to speak. That's my choice. And so it is where this is why I continue to say it happens in our relationship. It's happening in your relationships. It's everywhere. It is stop looking at what the other person is and look at your fucking self. Like, period. No more. There has to be no other conversation. Look at yourself. While I was sitting there, we were having a conversation. How did it go to left? How did we get into left field so fast? How did it take a left turn and all of a sudden we're in a shit show? Well, what did I do? Tara, what did you do? What did you say? What did all these things? Go through it authentically. But when you can't authentically go through it and authentically be with yourself and you continue to push the problem or the issues or the fault somewhere else, then at that point, when that person brings it up to you and you are not willing to choose or change that, then bada bing, bada boom, you're going to be served with what you're going to be served with, which is, the choices that matter. That's the power of choice. And so it comes down to when people want to have recordings and when people want to go back and say, well, it's on recording. Is the whole motherfucking thing on recording? Did it start from kumbaya breeze to all of a sudden kaboom? Is that right there on recording? No, it's not. Well, then throw the rest of it fucking out, because that is what matters. It is not what happens after the fact. It's not what happens 10 minutes later. It's what happened in the heat of the battle. And our biggest thing that we fight about is what you did in the heat of the fucking battle. And as you can tell, it still gets our ass because we still continue to be upset about what the other person does in the heat of the battle, instead of stopping and saying, whoa, doesn't fucking matter what David did. What did I do? And if what you did do, did you get up and then go take ownership of it? Did you get up and say, hey, I'm sorry for calling you out of your name, and I'm sorry for the way I was behaving? Did you go take ownership of it? And did you make sure that when you are apologizing, did you just take extreme ownership, or did you actually do the sideways, like I like to call a sideways sorry, where you're saying, I'm sorry for saying that, but the only reason it's that but. The moment that you say, I'm sorry that I said that, or I'm sorry for calling you a name, but, or any transition word after that negates your entire apology. It's why I tell David, your apologies are not authentic. If you're going to negate your apology by saying, I'm sorry I said that, or I'm sorry for calling you a name, but I wouldn't have called you a name if you weren't acting like one, or if you didn't do that, or if you didn't do this. No, 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 no. That doesn't, no, that negates your apology. You don't get to, that's not an apology. And now I'm not, and I'm going to tell you right now, I ain't going to accept that motherfucking apology, because I was taught, the way I was taught was, you take ownership of yourself and only yourself. It don't give a fuck who else around you is doing what they're doing. You need to own who you're being. And when you can do that and only worry about your two thumbs and stop worrying about everybody else and how they're acting or what they said or how they showed up, well, you know what? You had a choice. So that person's acting like an asshole. You have a choice. You want to call them an asshole or call them not an asshole? You have the choice. You chose to call them an asshole, then you need to have the power of taking ownership of your actions, regardless of who the fuck they were. And that goes for everybody out here in this entire fucking world. People don't get it. Will not, and this is why I say, like, Dwight Howard said the other, a few months ago when I saw it, a social media post from him, is he sat with himself for 5 days and he was like, wow, the emotional roller coaster I went through by sitting by with myself for 5 days, nothing. I sat in the same spot. I got up to go to the bathroom, but outside of, bathroom, and he already had like meal prep. So he, ate his one meal or two meals a day or whatever. But it was that he stayed in the same spot of solitude with himself. No, nothing, no music, no phone, no walking outside to see what the birds and everything are doing. Did you sit in solitude? And when you can sit with yourself and be with yourself, then you also have a choice of what you will accept and what you won't accept. And so when David tells me all the time that, I tell him that his apologies are not authentic, or that the goalpost has continued to change. Nah, it's because at the end of the day, you haven't learned how to authentically apologize. An authentic apology is taking ownership of you and only you, and not fucking talking about anything else that anybody else did. Because guess what? They don't fucking matter. Nobody matters. If the asteroid hits your car, you're like, but it's an asteroid, Tara. I don't have any fucking control over the asteroid coming in. Bingo. But you have control where your car's parked. If you had to go park it in fucking China to make sure it didn't get hit by the asteroid, then that's your responsibility. Well, that's ridiculous. I can't get my car to China if I'm in, Mexico. Well, then do what the fuck ever you need to do. But take ownership that hit you or hit your car because you did not move it. You did not take the ownership of your own car. And that's the extreme ownership I talk about. And that's the extreme ownership that Jocko Wilcox and Babo something, I'm so sorry, I'm going to butcher that, but go out there and look up extreme ownership. And when you read that book, I've read that book and listened to that book multiple times, it comes down to, it don't give a fuck what anybody else does. It is you and only you. And that's what I would have to add to this, like on the personal growth side of all of this, is it doesn't matter what the fuck I do. It's David. David needs to worry about him. And it doesn't matter what the fuck David does. I need to be worried about me. And what I say about worrying, it's not selfish. I'm talking about who you're being. So again, you can continue to pass that buck around. It's going to get to a point where you've talked and beat that subject to death, that then at some point, if people aren't changing, you have to make a choice, whether you want to be in that relationship or you don't, or you want to be in that business or you don't, or you want to be in that, that job that you want or don't. Everybody has a choice. And how much work are you willing to put in on yourself? And because you're not going to change the other person. And if you continue to walk around thinking that you're going to change the other person, you ain't, period. It ain't going to happen. So personal growth is about you and only you, your self-awareness, your growth, your ownership. And so that would be what I would add to that.
Facts. And so, if coach shows you a play in the third quarter and it's on recording and your ass missed that tackle, and you didn't tell coach, no, coach, I didn't miss that tackle. No, it's right here in the third quarter that you missed the fucking tackle, and you sit there and say, no, coach, but I made the tackle, and it's right there, and you missed it. Then
but
that's
coach
part
missed
of the
that you got injured in the first. You can't grab that tackle, so you can't make that tackle.
That's
so
a fucking excuse.
You've missed tackles. You've missed tackles in the second quarter, the third quarter, and the fourth quarter. So at the end of the day, it comes down to what happened originally.
You missed this tackle, and we're only talking about this tackle. And you sit there and say, I didn't miss that tackle, coach. And coach rewinds the shit and says, yes, you did. And you sit there and say, no, I didn't. Okay, let's rewind it again. Here you go. Prime example would be when Tara says, oh, you didn't apologize authentically. I'm like, really? Let's go back and listen to the last recording. Boop. I didn't say any of that stuff. So once again, this is a story, love, that you are rolling in mud with, that you continue to utilize as an excuse to deflect the whole entire reason. First, it wasn't that I didn't apologize. This was for like 7 years, y'all. It was David never apologized. Now it's to David doesn't apologize the right way. Now it's David doesn't apologize authentically. So it's like, what the fuck? And so, we move from one goalpost to the next goalpost, and it just becomes an ever-revolving goalpost.
Sucks when those
all the
goalposts get
time.
moved around.
Facts. And so this is where we have to be aware, as Tara talked about, of that situation at hand, not bringing in the past, not saying, no, I'm not going to do this, or saying, oh, your ass got to apologize to me for something you did last week before I apologize for something this week. That type of shit doesn't work, or calling people, out their names, especially, derogatory names that definitely don't fly. And so, this is why we had this conversation today, was stop being a blockhead, stop being hard-headed. And as I shared with you guys from the beginning, you definitely can hear that there's things that everybody has in their relationship that we just had out loud with you guys that, we work through, you guys work through, everybody works through. But make sure if you say you're going to do something, then do it, right? Don't continuously sit there and say, oh, I'm going to do this. Oh, I'm going to do this. Oh, I'm going to do emails. Oh, I'm going to do TikTok. Oh, I'm going to do posts. Oh, I'm going to show more affection. Oh, I'm going to do this. And then you don't do it. And then you tell the other person that they're not changing when they can go through a bucket list of shit that they've been talking about for, forever. And yet you're saying you're changing. And so, yes, it does come down to the point to where you have to ask yourself, is your health worth it? No relationship is worth your life. And especially if you keep, staying in a relationship and knives keep getting put in your back, and you take it out and hand the knife back to the person and they put it right back in the same spot, it becomes old. It's like an old sore. It's just permanent. It's just there. And so, yeah, and trust me, I know a lot about those. And so, we encourage you guys to definitely come and join
I
us
think everybody in
in
this
our
world
Hello
knows a lot
Plaza.
about those.
Yeah, we encourage you guys to come and join us in our Hello Plaza. This is the Getting Naked room. Definitely go and visit our Hello Plaza storefront, where we have multiple different businesses that are showcasing their products, their services, their master classes, their webinars. You can even showcase your podcast to where now you don't have to tell people to go to the Crusty Dusty Zoom or go to the Crusty Dusty Spotify. Hey, come and meet me in my Metaverse studio or my storefront, and let's have this conversation where you don't have to get dressed. You don't have to worry about your makeup. You ain't got to worry about none of that stuff. All the background. Oh, I like that background. Oh, my background's dirty. I don't have to worry about none of that stuff. And so that's really why we encourage you guys to come join us at the Hello LLC, where you can learn more about the future, because the future's already here. And it's, once again, how you do one thing is how you do another. Are you talking about it, or are you actually doing it? Prime example, we had a lady that said, hey, I need to get with you guys to, get my business up and rolling and going. She booked an appointment and didn't show up for the damn appointment. I mean, that blows my mind when people are so enthusiastic out in public and say, I want to do this, I want to do that. And then when it's time to do it, they don't do it. And you wonder why your life doesn't work, because you're not showing up for it in all aspects, but yet you're talking about it and you're not doing it. And so, make sure you guys are talking the talk and walking the walk. And more so, guess what? It's being consistent. It's being committed, and it's continuing to understand, to not regret on what happened, but reflect on what happened and understand the positive from that. Don't be rolling around in relationships, bringing up, 7 years, 14 years, but you're still there trying to use that as a defense, or bringing that up when there is a problem, when there's no other problem, when all the sucking and fucking and eating and all the rest of that is going on. That's not brung up. But when there's a problem, you bring it up. That's just nothing more than another knife, another problem that gets brung to it, especially when it's agreed upon not to bring it up. And that's the go-to of bringing up the past. And so make sure you are busting a move and doing something different, and not just talking about different, but actually being part of the change, not waiting for the other person to be a part of the change, but you do something and make sure it's done appropriately.
Yeah, yeah. So as we wrap up this amazing conversation, anything else you want to add?
No, that's it.
All right. Well, you know the drill. Love
Kindness,
and integrity.
but most importantly,
Commitment.
and consistency.
And until
And until next time,
time. Toodles.
toodles. We'll see you guys later.